Most peer groups are echo chambers where you have people that laugh at each other's jokes. They're from the same industry, from the same demographic. It's a great group that supports each other. But what you lose is the different lenses to see your challenge in a different way that you might be missing. So when you're stuck trying to solve the same problem over and over and over again, you're probably working on the wrong problem. And so that means someone has to go, I had the same issue, but I saw it differently, and here's what I did. My favorite saying in the world is you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. That means that you're trapped by your own expertise. You know what works, you know what doesn't work, and you know. So that expertise, the more you know, the harder it is for you to see possibility when it's right in front of you.
Why should I care about going the extra mile?
It's almost like being more human has suddenly become a competitive advantage. The competitive advantage in this AI world belongs to people that are...
Welcome to The Edge of Possible, the podcast dedicated to helping you achieve extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cameron Atlas, and together, let's unlock your edge. Often, our biggest barriers don't come from a lack of effort, but from a lack of perspective. It's easy to get trapped by our own blind spots, making it really difficult at times to see the disruptive possibilities that are standing right in front of us. And that's why I brought in Maddock on the show today. Mike is a serial entrepreneur who has launched 7 successful companies. For years, he has been an internationally recognized innovation consultant for many Fortune 100 companies and is the best-selling author of books like Free the Idea Monkey and Plan D. Mike's also the founder of Flourish Advisory Boards, where he builds invite-only groups engineered to help leaders navigate quickly changing business environments. In this conversation, Mike explains in great detail how to build a support system that really challenges you. We're going to walk through the exact framework for choosing the right people to surround yourself with and the radical shift from simply giving advice to sharing real-world experience. If you're ready to get unstuck, this episode is for you. That's coming right up here on The Edge of Possible. Mike, you've been part of peer groups for more than 2 decades now, and over the past few years have founded a number of them of your own. From your experience, what has been the value of being part of peer groups, and why should someone consider being a part of one?
So my favorite saying in the world is you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. That means that you're trapped by your own expertise. You know what works, you know what doesn't work, you know what your industry always does, you know what you've tried in the past, you know what's legal, you know what your boss wants, what you can afford, you know. So that expertise, the more you know, the harder it is for you to see possibility when it's right in front of you. A great peer group helps you see through your blind spots. Number one, it is a place where you can go and say things that you can't say to your family, your friends, etc. These are first world problems that CEOs can only talk to each other about. That's number one. But then having a group of CEOs that see your issues differently is so critically important, because no one else is going to tell you that your baby is ugly or your idea is bad. And we just need that in our lives.
Is that what makes up a good peer group then? Because I'm gathering that there's certain peer groups which wouldn't go down too well, and then there's others that just gel so incredibly well together. What I heard there is like there's a level of accountability there, and then there's a difference of just seeing the world differently. Like, are they 2 big parts? And then what else is there?
Yeah, I think that, so I've been involved in an EO, Entrepreneurs Organization peer group for over 26 years, a Young Presidents Organization peer group for over 16 years. These are my best friends in the world. They've literally carried me, quite literally and figuratively carried me through some very difficult times in my life. So I just love them. But it's, perfectly by chance that I wound up in this group. There's no intentionality. It's just kind of like you own a company. Here's a group. They're looking for someone. So I think the best peer groups have a few things in common, and they're somewhat counterintuitive. Number one, people don't get along. Your best friends stab you in the front, and if everyone's laughing at your jokes and looks like you, or comes from the same industry, goes to the same church, uses the same bathroom, you're going to miss the perspective that you need to see around corners. So great peer groups are engineered to have different lenses. Flourish Advisory Boards, that's the whole main point of difference. Number two, I think great peer groups are moderated by a true peer, which is to say, whoever is helping you move through conversations actually has the empathy that is required by the position. I think a CEO should monitor his peer group. And one other thing, if you have a professional coach in that group as well, uh, awesome, next level peer group.
It makes me think about, I've shared this on stage before about becoming your own uncompromising best friend. And I could see how this like relates here. And the way that I explain being your own uncompromising best friend is that so many people are walking around as their own worst enemy, right? They're kicking
Right.
themselves when they're down, and when they're up, they're saying it's not going to last. And then you've got best friends, which support you when you're down and celebrate when you're up. And then you've got your uncompromising best friends. And ideally, you're one for yourself, and also that you've got other people around you. And they're the folks that will support you when you're down, right? When you're really needing it. And they, like you said, carry you in that way, because sometimes you just don't have the strength. They celebrate when you're up, and they give you a good kick up the butt when you need it, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they can see that you're not living up to the standards that they know you're capable of. They can see that your potential is much greater than how you're executing on it right now. And sometimes ideally you can see it yourself, but there's just so many times where that doesn't happen. And having that outsider view of somebody who isn't in it, right? Because when you're in it, like, yeah, it can be difficult because you're seeing it, and you've developed certain biases about what you see and what you don't see. And so I could see that being, almost like a group of uncompromising best friends.
Yeah, and I think different groups for different reasons. I learned when my late wife got sick, she was terminally ill, and the greatest lesson I learned during that time was, in order to be gracious with someone else, you need to be graceful with yourself. You have to first accept that, God isn't finished with you yet. You're a work in progress, and you're doing the best you can. And that's an important lesson. So you need friends that are going to be that for you. I think that accountability is a slippery slope, though. I think in a peer group, and I'm talking specifically about P&L peer groups, people that are running companies, I'm heavily into the Gestalt methodology, which is to say, don't give people advice, share your experience. It sounds like this, Cameron, if you're about to step in it, and I say, dude, do not, whatever you do, don't do this. And you don't listen to me, and then you step in it and complain, I'm going to go, well, I told you not to step in it. But if you take my advice and it blows up in your face, you're going to be bad at me. So that's the problem with advice. So whenever possible, I try to share experience, which is to say something like, I was in a similar situation, and here's what I did. And man, was that painful. I lost a lot of money. I lost a lot of friends. Here are the lessons that I learned, and then walk away. Now you can do whatever you want with that. I'm just sharing my own experience, my own wisdom. But I'm not telling you what to do. And I think that leaders who are running organizations get really used to telling people what to do. And it's dangerous when you're dealing with peers.
Let's talk a little about, you mentioned from an accountability standpoint then, and where it's appropriate and maybe not appropriate. When it comes to somebody sharing the experience in a group, where is there a level of accountability? Is there somebody who says, you know what, I've listened to each person's view and their experiences and what's happened, and here's what I'm going to do about it? Like, is there a layer of accountability that you find valuable in that case?
Yeah, there are two areas where I think accountability is important. Number one, which is thankfully rare, when someone is doing personal harm to themselves or the community, for example, with addiction, I think regardless of the group, you have the responsibility to hold up a mirror in someone's face and not let them off the hook. Like, hey, not on my watch, man. You're better than this. I see this. This is not going to end well for you, your family, your company. So I'm going to tell you the truth. That's number one. Number two, a great moderator will ask, well, you just gave an update. That sounds really hard. It sounds like you have a path forward. Would you like to be held accountable for anything? And if you say, yes, I'm so sick of talking about this issue. Next month, when we get together, you guys have to ask me, hold me accountable. I'm going to do it. I'm finally going to take care of it. And I want you to hold me accountable. Well, that's different because you asked for it. But otherwise, share experience and step away from the bear.
Yeah. Well, I like those two examples. The first one being the way that I language it for myself when like talking about it when it comes to being my own uncompromising best friend is the wording I'll utilize is often, come on, man, you're better than that. Step up. Let's go. You got this. Come on.
Yeah.
And so there's
yeah.
It is, it's a challenge. It's leveling up a little bit there. And then, yeah, I mean, on the other side of that, I think when it comes to accountability, there's internal accountability, there's external accountability. Sometimes it's good to have both. And I'd say like the building and developing your own ability to hold yourself internally accountable and responsible for what it is that you're going to execute on is a game changer because you are around you more than anybody else is around you. And there's going to be times where other people just aren't around and no one's going to know whether you executed on it or whether you didn't. And you're going to know though. And this is where your character comes in and it's really, really important. And there is also a time and a place for external accountability. When you have both of those working together, it can be extraordinarily powerful because then you've built up a level of discipline. And especially as I'm hearing it there, if you've got these guys and gals that are in your corner and they want what's best for you, and then you've asked them to hold you accountable, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm executing on that thing over this next month. Like if I've said that, I don't want to come the next time around. And I think part of that, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think part of that would be not wanting to let them down. And then the other part would be not wanting to be seen as somebody who's out of alignment with what my values are, would probably be a good way of putting that.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work with weight loss. And the reason why until recently, Weight Watchers was the best solution was the same reason Alcoholics Anonymous is the best solution because of the accountability group. They put you in a group and you're declaring this is what I'm going to do, and you're there to support each other and challenge each other and hold each other accountable. And by the way, the reason I said until recently is because drugs have entered the fray, and now people are losing weight, automatically by taking a pill or getting injected, which is a whole other conversation. The big learning for me around challenging, come on, man, you're better than this. I learned from David Emerald, the late, great David Emerald, who was a teacher of mine at Stagen, and he became a friend. He wrote the empowerment dynamic, the power of TED. It was based on Stephen Cartman's work at Harvard, who wrote his thesis was actually about movies, and he had the three characters that drove a movie plot, and they were the victim, the persecutor, and a rescuer. And he was looking at movie plots that really went well. And that was, the rescuer becomes the coach, the persecutor becomes the challenger, and the victim becomes a creator. And what I learned from David was, particularly for challenging, because that's at my worst, I persecute. Like, God, are you kidding me right now? What happened? At my best, I'm like, Cameron, come on, dude, not on my watch. You and I both know you're better than that. The big lesson was that conversation is earned. That conversation is earned because in order for you to receive that challenge as my buddy, you have to know I'm your buddy. You have to know that I'm doing it for you, not for me, that I'm doing it because I love you and care about you. And that's my commitment. I'm not doing it to make myself feel smart. And as a young man, as a young leader, I lost a lot of credit because I was being clever. I was challenging. I was trying to do the right thing, but I hadn't earned the trust of a person, a team, a family member to do it. I didn't have the equity. And that was a big learning for me.
There's a big insight here. Let's talk about that. What did it take for you to learn the lesson?
I had to have people that I really cared about react very negatively to me. Like when someone that you really care about, who you're trying to help, gives you the finger and says, F you, dude. I'm like, well, hold on a second. I'm trying to help you. What just happened? You start to realize that there's something missing between what you're trying to do and the impact you're making. And again, the empowerment dynamic, the power of TED, it's a fable. It's kind of like a Pat Lencioni fable. That kind of laid it out for me. And then David, who was a teacher of mine and then, became a guru for Flourish Advisory Boards. So our members got to hear from him. We learned from the master, like we understood that real insight is that you can never change anyone else's behavior. You can only change how you're showing up in that relationship. And when you change how you're showing up, they change how they're showing up.
Mm.
You know, so you can't should people to death. You just should on me. You can't should people. They just have to see you taking on a different role. So instead of a victim complaining, you might say, you know what? Here's the outcome I want. This is what I'm trying to make happen. And I'm frustrated. If you hear me being frustrated, it's because I'm so committed to this outcome and I don't know how to make it happen. Boom. I just went from being a victim to a creator. And as soon as I did that, I changed my own language. You're going to come along and go, oh, I thought you were just being a jerk. Okay, here, if you want that to make that happen, what about this? What about this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? Now you're coaching me, about how to make it happen. But I changed the way I was showing up in that conversation. And I'll tell you what, great coaches are masters at that. They don't tell you what to do. They ask a question that makes you rethink how you're showing up.
Mm. Well, it's almost like inviting in the conversation versus trying to force something down somebody's throat. And with that, the language that you just utilized, I really appreciate, because it is, I feel like you're on my team versus I feel like you're on the other team and we're playing against each other versus playing together in this case. And that would be a perfect recipe for the wall to go up and go, you ain't coming in, man. It's dangerous to have you in here. And so, how did you go about building that equity? Like, what are some of the things that you do?
Well, by shutting up and listening more, I tend to have the answer, idea monkey, right? What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And I had to learn that sometimes the job to be done wasn't solving the problem. It was listening and understanding it. One of the big things that I learned was, and I'm going to tie it back into being a CEO for a second, the more upset, the more intensely reactive someone is to a situation, the higher their commitment to a value or an outcome that's been violated. So when I see someone just really, really amped up about something, my curiosity becomes, what isn't happening or what value has been violated that has this person who I really care about and respect so upset? Now imagine if you're running an organization. Imagine if you're running a company or a P&L and you are angry, you're upset, you're frustrated, you're afraid. Who do you talk to? Because you're supposed to have the answers. So if you can get into a room full of people who are true peers, with a coach, with a moderator, who can see you being so upset and be really objectively curious about it, not like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, you seem really amped up. What's going on? Wow. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure. It's like a treasure hunt, but you need these people to help you along with it. Because I don't know about you, but when I have competing values about something, I get very, very upset. And sometimes I'm not really even sure why. I'm just really, really upset. And I need to step away from it or be with a group that can help me figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. If you've got two values that are conflicting with each other, then there's an element of identity that's being challenged about, hang on, who am I? And then if I go down this road, then I'm not this anymore. But then if I go down this road, then I'm not this anymore. And there can be all kinds of challenges around identity that creep in there. How do you go about asking the questions, and let's maybe get some specific questions, some examples of being curious in these moments where maybe there is a little bit of a heated conversation that's kicked in. You've realized, oh, this is challenging somebody's value. They want the outcome, but there's something going on here. Rather than saying, hey, what's up? What's wrong with you? What are some things? What are some examples as to how somebody could approach that?
So in a meeting, if someone is really amped up about something, I will typically call them offline and say, hey, look, I know it's not an emergency, but I'd like you to present on this in the next meeting. And then there's a formulaic way. First of all, they can step away from it and be a little bit less amped up so they can think more objectively about it. Take them through. The first thing is, what emotions are you feeling? And the reason why you want to start with emotions is because it's going to open them up. And when they start their present,
you actually ask that question. So what
emotions
are you feeling? Great.
That's right. What emotions are you feeling related to this event or this thing that's bothering you? And by the way, that is the first thing you ask, and it's the first thing they say when they present. I am angry. I am frustrated. I am embarrassed. I am sad. And then the next thing is, what's the issue? Now, it's really this is the hardest question of all, because the divergent visionary types, sometimes even the strategists, tend to conflate a whole bunch of issues. They mix them together. And there's like, this is going on, and this is going on, and this is going on. And so then the next question is, got it. What's the issue? And if you keep asking the question, I learned this from my friend John Drury. If you keep asking the question, you finally get to the issue. And when you can get to the nugget of the one thing, not 5 things, the one thing, now you know what you need to solve. You have the emotions, you have the issue, and then it's okay. What contributes to this? I mean, tell me why it's so complicated. What have you tried? And then again, what are the emotions you're feeling? So now when you interrogate that issue, there are 2 kinds of questions. One is, I have a question for your consideration. And that means don't answer it. Just write it down, say thank you, and think about it. I want you to consider this question, because I don't need to hear the answer, but I think it's a question you might consider. Those are gold.
What would be an example of that? I don't know, they would change depending on what the issue is, but have you got an example that you could share?
My dad is the founder of this company. I have been running it now for 10 years, and every once in a while he jumps in and meddles with the company. That's a common family issue, or my mom or my uncle or whatever. And question for your consideration is, have you ever considered that this is how your father or mother is showing you love? Have you ever considered that they think it's their right? Have you ever considered that this is how their parent treated them? Something like that. And the second question is a clarifying question. Have you ever had a meeting to directly discuss what parts of the sandbox everyone on your executive team owns? Have you ever done that? And what were the results? I just want to know what the rules are in your organization. And the clarifying question helps me ask or share better experiences, not give advice, but share experiences going forward.
Being able to clarify those pieces, like you said, enables for me to then share an experience that could actually be useful versus something that was much earlier on and maybe more surface level that wasn't actually even going to be helpful at all.
Yeah. And I have a ninja. This was, so, you see the sign behind me, Idea Monkey, which means that on Colby, I'm a high, quick start, ready, fire, aim. What could possibly go wrong? 74 experiments before anyone else has tried one. Just if I launch 7 businesses and 4 of them are okay, everything's fine. That means that I'm very quick to, I don't need much information to solve. Okay, I think I got it. And I was recently married, and my wife quickly picked up on I am solving, and she just wants to be heard. This is a story as old as dirt, but I still haven't learned my lesson. So for you operators or strategists or orchestrators out there who have a crazy person like me on their team, this is the preamble. Hey, listen, I want to talk about something. There's nothing for you to solve here. I just want you to understand what I'm thinking about. There is nothing for you to solve here is a golden little phrase. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I'm off the hook. Go ahead. It liberates someone that's trying to help from helping in the wrong way.
What I've really appreciated in our conversation so far, there's been a couple of times now, that was the second one. You're framing up a space for a certain conversation to occur. And that is gold, because what you're doing is you're setting up the other person for success. You're setting up yourself for success. You're setting up the conversation for success. What often happens is if we've got certain biases that are going on for us in whichever area of life or business it is, and we go into that thinking that, assuming that this is the way it's going to go, or this is what the person needs, or this is what this needs to be about, then assumption can be a very dangerous thing. Right? In so many cases, it can be a very dangerous thing. And those couple of examples that you've given so far have been really, really good at creating a safe environment. One that Brittany, my wife, and I just finished doing this. Every single week we have a thing called the Weekly Pulse. It comes from the framework I have called the Progress Pulse that I use with businesses and other folks. And it's just simply these 4 questions of what's working, what's not, what are we going to do about it, and what help do we need. And in a personal sense, we do it in a much softer way so it doesn't end up in our divorce, because guaranteed it's going to happen otherwise.
This framework isn't working, okay?
So we soften the questions to being, okay, where did you feel appreciated, loved, taken care of in the first question? The second one being, where did you feel triggered, taken advantage of? Where did I make your life more difficult, these pieces? Then on to, what are we going to do about it and what support do we need? That second one, we frame that part of the conversation now with specific wording, similar to what you've shared, like different words, but it's the same reason for doing it. And the wording is along the lines of, what I'm about to share is said with love and for the purpose of bringing us closer together. Thank you for hearing me without judgment. It really means a lot. And then
lovely.
that provides a neutral space for me to share and feel that I'm not going to be judged, and for the other person to hear me fully, in this case, Brittany, to hear me fully and to be fully listening versus thinking about what she's going to say next, right? And this happened like on both of our ends. When we started doing it right near the start of our relationship, there was triggering that would go on left, right, and center.
I bet you the tone. Right? I bet you the tone. What I'm about to say is delivered with love.
Exactly. Because we've just delivered these amazing things, and then it's like, oh, I know what's coming next, right? And so it's like being able to provide that space, and I've built that into, like, when I give talks and working with clients as well now within organizations, and it's a great approach to use. You just use a slightly different wording. What I'm about to share is for the purpose of us growing even stronger as a team and making sure that we hit those targets that we've got for 2026 or whatever year, those of you listening. Thank you for hearing me. I really appreciate it. That is completely different to, hey, I've got some feedback as to why things aren't working how they need to be, something like that, right?
Yeah, I love the way I use the example of if I came to my wife with the checkbook open and said, hey, what's this check for this? And what's this check for this? And I don't understand what this is for. It won't be long before the reaction is going to be very defensive. But if I start by saying, hey, listen, I'm trying to plan a romantic trip to Paris for our anniversary. So can I ask you some questions? Everything changes. So starting with the outcome or the intention, I have a podcast called Your Seat at the Table, and my podcast partner is my brother-in-law, who's a stone cold operator / orchestrator, which means he sees things the opposite way that I do. And so it's kind of fun to see how we see issues differently. And my sister and John and I were in this conversation. My sister got so tired of listening to these tips and tricks that she decided to make a drinking game out of it. So every time she hears us doing one of these things, she's like, drink. Anyway, so I learned this first from Rand Stagen or someone in his community. And then I heard Brene Brown say it on stage. the story I'm telling myself is a really useful frame where if you can come up to someone and say, hey, the story I'm telling myself is I've really ticked you off. Can I talk to you about something? And then they
Really
have
good.
the story, your story, not their story. This is something that's going on in your head that might be wrong. And it opens up the possibility for them to go, oh no, I'm not mad at all. I'm just trying to figure this out. This resting bitch face that you see from me is me
Mm.
focusing on this problem because I care about the outcome. I'm not mad at you. Yeah, so that the story I'm telling myself is another, that there are all these interesting challenges. In order for all this to work, the people that you're with, have to be seen as peers that are objective and their stake in the outcome is just trying to help you. That's number one. And that is earned. And number two, they have to be able to see your challenges differently. And
Mm.
that's what's wrong with most peer groups. Most peer groups are echo chambers where you have people that laugh at each other's jokes. They're from the same industry, they're from the same demographic, and usually they wind up being friends and they recruit each other because they like being together in a room. And what you get is kindred, like Love Fest. It's a great group that supports each other, but what you lose is the different lenses to see your challenge a little bit in a different way that you might be missing. And that's how you get unstuck. So when you're stuck trying to solve the same problem over and over and over again, you're probably working on the wrong problem. And so
Mm.
that means someone has to go, you know, I had the same issue, but I saw it differently. And here's what I did. For what it's worth, this is how I saw it. This is what I did about it. And here's what happened. And in my experience, that's when people go, oh my gosh, this isn't a sales problem. It's a measurement problem. This isn't a measurement problem. It's a people problem. This isn't a culture problem. This is, and eventually everybody's going to be right. But you have to have all those perspectives so that at the right moment in the time, you get someone going, huh, I guess I see it a little bit differently. This is what I did about it. And that's how you get unstuck. That's what a great group can do for you.
How do you go about finding that group then and ensuring that people do see the world differently to you?
Yeah, I use Colby. Colby, it's one of many different things that measures how you behave under pressure or in flow. I can also use predictive index. I've correlated it to Strength Finder. And based on the pattern of your Colby result, I can tell for sure if you're an operator. I can tell for sure if you're a strategist. I can kind of tell, depending on what industry, if you're a rainmaker. I can tell for sure if you're a visionary. I can kind of tell, depending on what industry and your CV, if you're a tech futurist. And I can tell for sure if you're an orchestrator. And so what I do is I interview these people to make sure they share values like courage and authenticity and curiosity, and they want to have fun. They don't take themselves too seriously, and generosity. They're there for the good of the whole. They want to help. Um, and then they're in the same zip code in terms of revenue. And then if there's a seat available for them, one of those seats, we put them in a group. And it's a terrible business model because it's like playing Tetris. It's hard to put these groups together, but once they're together, it's a premium experience that where the results are you get unstuck much more readily. And you know what? It's hard not to bond with people that are helping you like that.
Mm. What have been some examples? You mentioned about the different groups you've been a part of carrying you at different times. What have been some of those examples that you've had to work through, I guess, in order to get unstuck or to grieve or to go through the hardship? Or what are some of those things that have happened that the peer group's been incredibly useful for?
So I'm an entrepreneur first, and I've started 7 companies that had real P&Ls, and a few of them have done really well. But what I noticed in one of the companies, and it was a peer group that helped me notice it, was that the smartest people that I loved, actually were mirrors of me. And so what happened was we're innovation consulting firm, right? So we went from 5 million to 10 million to 15 million to 20 million to 25 million, like a rocket ship
Mm.
in like 3 or 4 years. And then we went from 25 million to 22 to 18 to 16. And it was a peer group person that said, hey, look, when was the last time you actually had your executive team? Again, now these people in this executive team today, if I'm not still working with them, they're running large companies, like big. One became the chief futurist at the largest consulting firm in the world. I mean, super smart. And we all were hammers looking for a nail. There's this thing called the law of instrument. Maslow came up with it. And it's you're a hammer looking for a nail is the way we talk about it today. But the insidious thing about the law of instrument is that we will make everything look like a nail that we are uniquely capable of hammering. So every problem looks like something, oh, I know how to fix this. And it turns out that I was surrounded by a bunch of innovators. And so under pressure or in flow, we just reinvented 24/7. So when we had a good thing that was working, it didn't matter. We were going to reinvent it anyway. And sometimes your company needs to pivot, but a lot of times it doesn't. It needs to be operationally sound. It needs to be checking on the strategy and kicking the tires and tweaking it. It needs a really great culture, etc. So unwittingly, um, I had surrounded myself with a bunch of people that laughed at my jokes, you know.
Yeah. Before this, before running companies, like let's go back to earlier in your years. What was how does someone get into what you're doing?
Well, first of all, if you go and want to go way back, my dad is a Navy captain, Notre Dame operator guy. He ran factories, he ran plants, he ran security in Vietnam, ran ships. You know, the trains run on time, the ship sails on time, button down servant leader. He's a minister. And my mother was an artist. You know, she was a liberal arts person. She loved to read. She would encourage me to just do anything. So I had these parents that were opposites, really, not in values. They shared all the same values. I would drive my dad crazy because I wouldn't stick with the plan. I would delight my mom because I wouldn't stick with the plan. She was just like, it doesn't matter. You'll figure it out, son. And she made me believe it. She made me believe that I was capable of doing anything I wanted to do. What a gift. The gift of self-esteem. She was wrong, but I believed it. So it didn't matter. Um, and then I started working early days for any job I could get. And I just happened to work for entrepreneurs. Every career choice I made was to work with an entrepreneur. So I got a chance to peek behind the curtain. And guess what, folks? Behind the curtain, it's pretty ugly back there. You know, there are a lot of mistakes being made. And these
Yeah.
people are trying to do as best they can. And they're incredibly flawed. And they swear and they cry and and they win and they lose, but they just keep going. And my gosh, what a blessing to see that you don't have to be perfect. You just kind of have to be a good person, put your nose down, solve a real problem that the world wants solved, and you can do it. And so that's how I wound up hanging a shingle. And I always had my own little companies, but my real company, the first 1991, I hung a
Mm.
shingle when I had no right to own my own company and just kind of said, I'll figure it out because my mom says I can do anything.
Did you figure it? Was it your mum specifically? Was it also the being exposed to the different entrepreneurs that you worked with? Like, what was the kind of timeline, and how was it that you go, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go for this?
What's interesting is my first job out of college, I had a job working for an old designer, and I was selling a system for him. It was like a sales job. And I said, I'll take the job as long as I can show my portfolio. He goes, yeah, whatever you want to do. So I wound up selling a system to this company, to West Douglas. And then I said, hey, are you guys hiring at all? And he's like, yeah, we're looking for an art director. And I said, I got my portfolio in the car. So I came back in and I won that job. And that place was run by a person that I did not think was a very good boss. I'd read a book in college, Never Work for a Jerk. And it was the first time I thought, this guy isn't really that good of a person. And about 6 months in, I was desperately trying to get this young lady to go out on a date with me. She'd been dating the same guy for 5 years. And I'm like, she will not give me the time of day. So I got hired as the editorial cartoonist for the Pioneer Press, which was a large chain of newspapers in the States. And I took the job, walked into my boss to resign, and he doubled my salary to keep me there. And the truth be told, the only reason I stayed was because Ruth still hadn't said yes to a date. About 3 months later, she said yes. I resigned 2 months after that and started my own company.
Wow. And how long was that? That was your marriage, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were married 32 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
What
The
a
need for
blessing.
persistence, right? And sticking around there for those extra few months, right? Incredible.
It was crazy. Yeah. I stand by, there's a phrase for it now. It's called sexual harassment, but I was young. I had no idea.
Classic.
It wasn't really. I mean, I wasn't hurt. She didn't report to me, but man, there would definitely be a file on me these days. I was there was like a dog to a bone. Anyway. Yeah. And it turns out, I said I was recently married. It turns out that if you're really nice and you ask God real sweetly, he's willing to send more than one angel in a lifetime. So I feel very, very fortunate.
Talk to me about the time when Ruth did pass away. How many years ago was that, and how was that for you?
That was a blur just over 4 years ago now. But she was sick 2 years before that. Is that right? I don't even know. I remember it was November 19th. She had just finished cutting my son's hair on the porch. And I was in my office writing, and she came in and she was having a seizure. I quickly surmised I thought she was having a stroke. She tried to dip a taco or nacho chip. She was having a snack and she couldn't find the bowl. And then she just came in and she's like, do you see these like sparkly things? I'm like, okay, we're going to the hospital. And I took her to the emergency room and said, my wife's having a seizure or a stroke. And that pro tip, if you say stroke in an emergency room, it is go time. And minutes later, there was a doctor telling me there was a mass in her brain and it wasn't a stroke. And they had to figure out if the cancer started in her brain or somewhere else. And man, it was a gut punch. I made a silly joke about lack of foreplay to the doctor because I was like, what did you just say to me? And I just went and sobbed in the waiting room. And 19 months later, she passed. It was what a privilege to hold her hand during that time. She was an amazing, amazing woman of faith and just a shining light for everyone. So I got to be the person that held her hand, and and I feel so grateful. One of the lessons I learned during that is it's possible to hold grief in one hand and gratefulness in the other. Like, what am I going to do? Complain? We had such a great relationship, and who gets that? One of the things about peer groups is you find out that most people don't have great relationships. It's rare. It really is. And so we got to have that together. I'm super sad about it. And still, for my boys, mostly our boys, but we all are so grateful that we got a chance to hang out with Ruthie and make memories together.
That grief and gratitude on two different hands. What was that experience, or what is that experience actually like, having both of those together?
Well, life happens in moments, and about 10 years ago, the best man in our wedding was diagnosed with like cancer everywhere. He called me. I'm like, oh my God, where is it? It was everywhere. And I remember saying to him, well, you're alive. you get to live. He's still with us, but I'll tell you what, and he's doing great. Like, he's had these crazy surgeries and he is living his best life. I promise you, the last 10 years for him has been so rich and fulfilling. I remember him saying, I just want to see my son graduate from high school. Listen, his son's about to graduate from college, like, it is a miracle. And the real miracle is that he's up awake and noticing. Garrett Gunderson, my favorite money muse, came and talked to all of our Flourish groups. His definition of wealth is the ability to be present, which I think is absolutely brilliant. You're not distracted by it. You can be right here, right now. And my dear friend of mine, forum member, coach in Flourish Advisory Boards, Jonathan, he's like, right after Ruthie got sick, he said, I want to tell you about a story I heard. He's like, there were two monks walking in the jungle. Now, scap that. That's a different story. There's one monk walking in the jungle, and he hears a twig break behind him. He looks behind him. There's a tiger stalking him. So he starts to trot. Now the tiger's trotting behind him. Then he starts to run. It's running behind him. So he jumps off a cliff to avoid this tiger, grabs a vine, and he's hanging from this cliff. And the tiger's on top circling. He looks down 300 feet below. There's another tiger waiting for him to fall. And then he looks up and sees there's a rat gnawing on the vine. So he's having a bad day. This is a bad moment in time for him. Just then he looks to his right and there's a wild strawberry plant growing out of the side of the cliff. He reaches over, takes a strawberry, eats it. And in that moment, that strawberry and life was perfect. And my friend John said, Mike, you got to look for the strawberries. And what a brilliant piece of advice, so we just look for strawberries and they happen in moments. Like, we just look for the strawberries became the mantra. And, we had lots of those moments and we really noticed there's time for grief, but it robs you of the moment. If you have a moment where you can just be with each other, look for strawberries.
I think finding those, it's beautiful and beautifully said. Do you think that we're, maybe humans and the distractions that we have around us, maybe losing the ability of knowing how to actually find those strawberries?
Yeah, I think I know it. We had a retreat. One of the forum groups had a retreat last week, and we had a VIP tour of Universal Studios in Orlando, thanks to one of our members. It was sweet. And I don't know if anybody's ever been on one of these, but it will ruin your every other experience you've ever had, because VIP basically means ride any ride you want, go into the outdoor, you have a personal guide, you're backstage, like you wait for nothing. And I remember coming out of one of these rides, my head spinning, and I went by this family, and there are 5 of them, from youngest to oldest, 2 parents, and they're all staring down at their phones. And it just stopped me. Like, oh my gosh, you're at Universal Studios in Florida. Like, magic memories are being made all around you, and you guys are all not with each other right now. You're all looking at your phones. So I catch myself. I have to be very intentional about just put everything down and be in the moment. That's hard.
I think we all have to be more and more intentional, because I've thought about this a fair bit over the last few years. When it comes to food as the example, thousands and thousands of years ago, our brains are wired that if you've got food there, eat the food, man. If there's a bush of berries there, eat the whole thing, right?
Right.
Because you don't know when the next one's going to come. Nowadays, there's bushes of berries, so as we'd word it, within every single aisle of every single grocery store. So there's an abundance of it. Our brains haven't caught up, though, from an evolutionary standpoint. And so we're still acting like we were, thousands and thousands of years ago. And then if we look at the different stimuli, there's only going to be more stimuli in the years to come. I can't see how there's going to be less. There's going to be more companies, more people, more things buying for our attention, whether it's through like a device or something else. and our ability to be, you use the great word, which is intentional, being extraordinarily intentional about what you give life to, what you give attention to, what you give your presence to. Because to me, it's the difference between an extraordinary life and one that is kind of just passes you by. And I'd maybe follow on from that. When I gave a talk down in Florida a couple of months ago, and I said, "Where do your best ideas come from?" The classics are there in the shower, out in nature, on the toilet. And everyone has a bit of a laugh, but it's true. And one of the reasons, like, you're away from stuff, you're not like there in it, and there is something about space that gives us and gives our brains the ability just to think a little and have space around our thoughts to dream up ideas and to contemplate different things, and to not be in it. And so I wonder if it's not only struggling to be present, but is that maybe going to impact our ability to come up with novel ideas? And then is that also going to impact our ability to recover and recharge our energy because we're always expending versus having these moments that are moments of recharge or moments of replenishment?
I think there's, a couple of things. I think in terms of practice, the most clever people I know have scheduled quiet time.
Yes.
And they call it different things. Some people call it prayer. Some people call it meditation. Some people call it walking in nature. But they're all doing it. They're just detaching themselves from any kind of cord and spending an hour or so just being with their thoughts or with their God. And those people tend to have the best ideas. They're the healthiest I know, because they're taking care of their battery, recharging and giving their subconscious a chance to come and rescue them. I'm a big believer, and I wrote about it in my second book, Free the Idea Monkey, to focus on what matters most, that I noticed early days that if I had something that was making my brain busy, if I wrote it down and told myself, I'll have the answer in the morning, I'm going to let it go, more often than not, my subconscious would just fix it. They would like, oh yeah, here it is. But the more I thought about it, like if I was super focused on it, I'd lock up. I couldn't get it. It was only when I let go of it. And it's kind of like, what's that guy's name? What's that guy's name? You know what? If I don't think about it, it'll come to me. Have you ever said that to yourself?
Yeah,
and then it does.
Sure.
As soon as you stop holding on so tight, your brain can go, oh, it was Alex. And it just comes to you. So you just got to let it go. And that's a practice. One thing that gave me some hope, other than these schools who are finally saying, you know what? No, put the phone in a locker. You can get it at 4, just no more. We're going to do human to human stuff, which I totally celebrate. I think that's the way to go. And it's probably a pretty good idea in the workplace too, although with screens and everything, I don't know what you do about that. I was at a game store over the holidays looking for unique novel stocking stuffers. And, this is so like, think about D&D and all these board games. And there was a group of 5 girls, probably somewhere between 5th and 8th grade. I can't tell age anymore. And they were all talking about different games. And one of them said, hey, Molly, put it away. That phone is destroying you. We are with each other right now. No more phone. And everyone went, yeah, no more phone. And so these young kids are getting the message that in order to relate to each other, they can't be on the phone all the time. And they're self-policing. And I walked out going, all right, that's really good. That was a really good conversation because they're aware of it. They're aware that it might be robbing them of something and they're doing something about it. So that's good.
It is. There was a study, I can't remember the exact stats, but there was one, I think it was the last year or the year before, the kids were addicted to technology. And for 30 days, I think it was, around 30 days, every day they got an hour on their phones, on their devices, and then the rest of the time was out doing, like, actually experiencing things, exploring things. And there was a certain percentage of those people, of those kids, that after the 30 days, they chose not to use the hour.
Yeah.
Because of the experience of once you're removed from the hit that you get from that, which is highly addictive, it opens you up to see the different things and that alleviate you from maybe some of the stresses. I wonder, like, it was about 6 years ago, I was over in Europe recording some music, and it was in this small place in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there was this old fort kind of castle thing that was about an hour and a half, 2 hours hike. And it was up these stones and there's barely anyone else around. So I cruise up there from time to time. And on one of these times up there, I was just contemplating, because I decided to go, it was a 6-week period, and I decided no phone whatsoever. We're going to be fully focused on creating as great a stuff as we possibly can. And as I'm walking up there, I had this thought of, I wonder how many like masterpieces from the last how many hundred or thousands of years wouldn't have been created if they were around today.
And you Googled it.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, they sat with their thoughts. They were fully focused. There was nothing else around. And the second thing to do with that is that they didn't need to have it finished by a certain time.
Yeah.
And so it took
Leonardo da
ages.
Vinci's notebooks are just, have you seen them? I mean, his
no.
musings. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, right.
You can tell that he's just always thinking about, what if people could fly? What if this, like, he was inventing and thinking and taking things apart all the time. And so 6 weeks without a phone, then what happened on the other side of it?
Ended up going, I can't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure I ended up going another 4 or 5 weeks at least, because it just felt so good. It felt so good. I mean, I'm a big tech user, and it helps to promote the work that I do. It enables me to reach people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for technology. So there's such valuable uses to these different forms of technology. I think the key thing there is that word that you used before, which is intentionality, of how are you ensuring that you're using that to your advantage versus it using you to its advantage. Because there's, and rightly so, there's the different companies that have these different platforms or devices. It's in their best interest to have it so that you continue coming back over and over again. That's business, right? Otherwise it'd be like a restaurant serving you up crappy food. Right. And so, they're going to serve you up as great a food as they possibly can to make sure you keep coming back over and over again. Point I'm getting at there is the level of responsibility that we need to be taking as leaders, and then people within organizations and with our families as well, to ensure that we are utilizing these pieces of technology to our advantage, because it's only going to continue speeding up. And if we don't get a handle on it now, then, it could be a runaway train potentially. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, being a dad of 2 boys, one who was highly impacted by technology and the other one who wasn't, I have a real life case study of what can happen in terms of, impact of technology, both good and bad. So I'm very curious about it, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we'll figure it out. I'm an optimist when it comes to technology, because I really want to believe that we'll use it for good, not evil, ultimately.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm a massive believer in our ability to be able to overcome challenges, and I'm super excited about, some of the industries like medical, for example, and some of the breakthroughs that are going to happen there. And I know for me, my uncle is a remarkable man. He passed away a couple of years ago. He had a really bad car accident like 40 something years ago, and was paralyzed from the neck down. And he had a remarkable life. Him and my aunt, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. He passed away soon after that. And I learned so much from him. And it has me extraordinarily hopeful for people that are experiencing that now, about what their lives and accessibility and ability to be able to live a life that is aligned to whatever it is that they're wanting to live. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's crazy when you see what's happening with technology in terms of literally reading people's minds and the ability for that to make a machine that's running your body. Like we're so close to so many breakthroughs. So we live in exciting times for sure.
So what's your opinion then on when it comes to the peer group side of things and the rate of change that's happening on the technological side of things with artificial intelligence and being able to ask certain questions, get different answers to certain challenges? Do you see them matching up at some stage, or is there always going to be a place for one-on-one or one to small group conversations with people where there's a lot of trust there?
So the Flourish Advisory Board model is that in every group, there is at least one operator, one strategist, one rainmaker, one visionary, one tech futurist, and one orchestrator, and a professional moderator and professional coach who are also P&L owners or have been. So everybody in the group has run a P&L, and each one of these groups meet virtually. So they meet online once a month. Every group is from the same zip code in terms of revenue. So the average revenue of one group might be 600 million in revenue. The average revenue in another group might be 5 million, but they all are peers. And I have created it's called the Flourish Advisory Brain Trust, which is essentially a machine learning version of this group dynamic where you can ask it any question or any business issue, and it'll come out and ask you the questions. I've got a whole bunch of patents applied for, but basically what would the operator ask if it was in the same position? What would the strategist? What would the visionary? And so you get a different question from each one of these seats, a few of them, and that question is empowering. But what makes it unique and important is that it's fed by the community. So, we all have friends that have set up. I have a virtual board of advisors that is powered by AI. I've got Elon Musk. I have Steve Jobs. This is my virtual AI agent backed blah, blah, blah. Well, that's awesome. It's a really cool idea. And there's definitely some of that in this. But what I love about it is that every time there's an interaction, it gets smarter, it gets more curious, and it is born out of real conversations of real CEOs interacting with it. So rather than we've all experienced now generative AI turning into your best friend. You're so smart, Cameron. What a great question. Why are you kissing my ass? I'm just trying to get an answer here. That's right. I'm kissing your ass because you're so handsome. So rather than having this thing turn into your best friend, I am intentionally building it so that it ticks you off. The paradox of a great peer group is that you respect them, but you don't always like what they say. And it's weird because I want groups that really care about each other and love each other. But if everybody's getting along really well, then something's wrong because they're not challenging each other enough. So I think there is a space for generative AI and machine learning, but I think humans have to be involved in it at this level so that it doesn't become diluted. So that's what we've built, and it's available for members.
How are you training it? Are you training it through the actual conversations that happen on a peer group level, or it is? So are you recording the conversations then, and then that gets uploaded into the language model?
That's one of the fun things is that each one of these archetypes speaks to you like that archetype. So, the visionary sounds different than the operator. The way it's trained is that through interaction. I don't want to get too involved into the takeaway is that in each interaction, there are insights gleaned, questions reframed, and rated. The answers are rated so that every time someone comes back with that question, the community has made it better and the insights get better and better and better. And that is all contained within this vessel that is the community. And so it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. anybody who's asking a question or feeding this machine has a P&L. They have empathy. They are living this world. It isn't some professor going, I read the case study and it's clearly like, it's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
Just a quick digression. I was asked to be on a university board, and during this meeting, there was an entrepreneur who happened to be on the board who owned a very large plumbing contractor. And he had some ideas about recruiting for this university because recruitment was down. And then I went out to lunch with the dean of the school, and he made fun of the plumber. Can you imagine a plumber telling higher education how to find a student? And I'm like, yeah, I can imagine a plumber, because he's actually, if he doesn't make payroll, the bank takes his house. You're tenured, have no risk. I was just like, I lost my mind. Now, I didn't yell or anything, but this is what was happening in my head when I said, I'd rather not be on this board. But it taught me a lesson about true peer interaction and empathy. And eventually you'll ask me a question and I'll give you the punchline to what I'm about to say. But it was a real lesson for me.
Yeah, well, let's go. What was the lesson? So just to set you up for that, first and foremost, and then I got one. Then I got a follow up.
So I know I've listened to your podcast, and you always ask about a value, a belief, and a habit. And and a belief that I have that I've learned over time is that wisdom is way, way, way more valuable than intelligence. And I mean that in a bunch of different ways, but the primary way is that, getting intelligent, getting smart, particularly in the business world, is hard and it is painful and it leaves marks, and people lose their jobs and people lose their fortune. Earning intelligence is hard. Wisdom is a gift. Wisdom is a gift by someone who's already gone through all that and is willing to share their experience with you. And it's usually given with humility and care and love and generosity. So my belief is that the more you can surround yourself with people that are wise and who are willing to share their wisdom, the better your life's going to be. So that's a core belief that I learned because of the generosity of people whose shoulders I stand on now. And one of those people was not that professor. But it was the plumber for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think what you experienced in that case as well is it was the professor as well. It's just the opposite of that. And this is where the power of contrasting experiences come in, right?
That's
where
right.
You have on one end, you experience one thing, and then on the other, you experience the exact opposite, and it solidifies a certain belief that you might have because you've experienced it on both ends of the spectrum.
Well said.
It's really interesting. I haven't thought about it in this way before. When I went through and continue to go through how to tell stories, like the art and the science of storytelling and what occurs in our brains. And if we think back to thousands and thousands of years ago, stories was how information and wisdom in this way was communicated. I'm going to tell this story, and it's going to save you from being eaten by something, right? That's what it was back then, because things were potentially going to kill you. And what happens is, if you're telling the story well, our brains are wired to really focus in, to focus in and to be able to see it. That's why when sometimes you tell if you're telling a really good story or somebody's telling you a really good story, you can see that in your mind. You're creating it. You're creating a version of that. And one of those pieces is to avoid death, right? Is to ensure that that the species continues to thrive. And so I think there's some real wisdom in that wisdom that you shared of wisdom has been told through the power of story for many, many years, which has enabled for the species to continue on. And so I would say that's a great belief. That's, probably been going on for 30, 40, 50,000 years or something like that.
Yeah, that's clever. I think that you're right. It would explain why I glom onto the lessons from not just great storytellers, but people that are speaking from their heart, because they're not They're not trying to be overly intellectual. They're just trying to share a nugget of something they went through and are typically trying to keep you from either from sharing in their delight. Like, it was awesome, man. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. It was like the best thing that I ever did. Or sparing you from their horror.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm ready, willing, and able to do that for other entrepreneurs. When entrepreneurs call and say, "Hey, can you help me with something?" I got news for you. I've never say no. I'm like, "Sure, man. What do you want to? If I can help you, I can help you." And I'm an open book,
Yeah.
because so many people before me have given me that gift, you know. And it really
Like
is a gift. It is a gift.
it really is. And I think we're very similar like that. There was this moment that I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and an old teacher that I taught at the school that I went to as a kid back in Australia reached out and had mentioned about a student that was having a challenge at the time and asked if I would have a conversation with him. And we ended up it was on a call, probably about an hour and a half, something like that, and was able to share some of the lessons that I learned about going for what I really wanted when, growing up in a very remote part of Australia, and move into the kind of areas that I moved into is like kind of crazy in that way. Like, I had 11 people in my graduating class. So it was just middle of nowhere. And it was just being able to share some of the beliefs that I've formed over time and how I've gone about it. It absolutely is that. It is the desire and the belief that I can help to alleviate somebody else's suffering or somebody else's pain, and that they don't have to go through that. And I know it's a huge part of what drives me now, where, a lot of the stuff that I learned started at about mid-20s, because that's when I went through a massive amount of training in this space. And yeah, I look back and, man, I wish I knew this like, a good 5-10 years ago. And yeah, there's just so many beautiful lessons that can be passed on. And as you mentioned earlier, sharing those experiences without people having to, without having to fix something, I guess, is like what you were sharing before, of trying to solve somebody's problem, but actually just being able to share the wisdom that you've learned over the years, is incredibly important. And to go with that, I think with you mentioning about the AI side of things and building in a data set, which is going to be, I think, maybe the most important thing going forward, of AI being actually useful in the ways that it seems it's going to be, but there's still plenty of things that aren't where it need to be yet. And I think about this, imagine like a self-driving car, as that continues to advance and advance and advance, driving along one day, and there's a sun that's going down in a certain direction, like maybe on a 45-degree, it's getting towards sunset, and something runs across the road, and for some reason it's not programmed in, and an accident occurs, and somebody either gets injured or killed, or whatever the thing is that happens. Well, what's going to happen with that is going to be digested, what happened, reviewed. How do we go make sure that doesn't happen again? And then it gets uploaded into the system. And that system is every single car in that fleet. And that's like every single person on the planet having a conversation. Let's say every entrepreneur or every CEO on the planet being able to have a conversation, and the information is there and you know it immediately. When I started thinking about it like that, when it comes to AI, it's going to be an incredibly powerful tool. Yes, it already is, but I mean, we haven't begun to see and experience what is coming over the next coming years. So I think it's brilliant what you're doing, of ensuring that the data set is provided by those who actually have the wisdom. Otherwise, it ends up being theoretical from books, for example.
Right. And I think that case studies can be pretty clinical and brutal, when you read the conclusion. we've all been in what, Mr. Atlas, what do you think they should do? And everyone gives their opinion, and then the professor, you're all incorrect. The guy's done this class for the last 23 years, so he's the smart one. Well, believe it or not, when a CEO we talked about value, the collision of values before. When a CEO is faced with firing her best friend who no longer is up for the job for the good of the whole, because her responsibility is to hundreds, not one, that's a really difficult decision. What kind of questions do you ask in that situation? A case study is not going to bring it. And there are at least 18 different questions that are going to be different that you can ask about that situation that will make that it will allow that person, based on the wisdom behind the questions, to make the right decision at the right moment of time for her and her team. And it's going to be different. It isn't a black and white answer. With wisdom comes empathy. There has to be empathy infused in the model, or it's going to be an issue. So that's kind of the torch that I'm carrying with AI. I heard the other day AI is the Ozempic of business. Right now we're in the I need to get faster and more efficient. AI. And, we've all hired people who were great and fixed the wrong problem. And it didn't help the business. And so I think the thoughtfulness around what are we trying to do here? What problems are we trying to solve? What pinch points do our customers and our employees and our clients need us to think about first, second, and third? And then and only then is Ozempic the answer, So
Well,
it's wild days,
It is a wild time. Period, wild time. There's a study just on the Ozempic side of things that I saw. It came out like the last few weeks. That's showing that, I can't remember the exact numbers, but when somebody stops using it, they put on the weight. I think it's like 3 times faster than somebody who was using diet and exercise and behavior change, which makes so much sense, because if you're taking a pill and you're not changing your values, you're not changing your beliefs, you're not changing the underlying reasons why that happened in the first place, then when that is gone, then it's going to go back to the way it was. And this is really interesting, because I haven't kind of thought about that in that way, like piecing these two together, because I think from an AI standpoint, it's going to be the same thing, is that so many people will utilize it in order to get rich, for example, or in order to not do something, versus, as you were sharing, I think the people and the companies that are going to really thrive in this coming age are those that 100% can utilize different technologies and utilize it in a way that enables us to be more human.
Yes.
And to bring the parts of us, the empathy, the consideration, the listening ability, right? To be able to really listen. That's an interesting one to think about, because those who do that, the relationships grow deeper. They grow stronger. There's greater levels of trust, respect, and the ability to work together. And if you don't have those things, you might be faster, you might make more money in the shorter term, but if there's no loyalty, if there's no trust, if there's no areas that it really shows that you give a shit about me, then as a person that's within a team, I could see that being, well, why should I care about going the extra mile?
I was listening to, I think it was Billy Joel talking about music, and he's got a lot of stories. He's an absolutely great musician.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how true musicians listen for the mistakes and they leave them in. Because what the mistakes when they're in the studio where they kind of mess up is what makes it like that's what makes the music unique. Like that, oh, that was a mistake that we left in. We didn't think that was going to happen. And that's the hook that people remember. And who knew that a typo or messing up in an email or on a LinkedIn post or a social media post or something would be the way that people identify that you actually wrote it. It's almost like being more human has suddenly become a competitive advantage. Just it's becoming harder and harder for people to connect with the humanity. And I got news for you. Like years and years ago, uh, I realized that, when people say that that person has star quality, it's because they're themselves,
Yeah.
that at about 8, all of us can draw, all of us can sing, all of us can dance. And then over the years, the world conspires to tell us we can't draw, we can't dance, we can't sing, but not all of us. Some of us never lose that. And they walk into a room and they're just themselves. What you see is what you get. And people are like, oh my God, what is it with this person? I love this guy. I love this person. They're just WYSIWYGs. What you see is what you get. They never learned the lesson that they couldn't be themselves. And I think that people see that and they long for that in themselves. They remember when they had that. And we spend our whole lives trying to get back to that 8-year-old, most of us, where we can finally just be ourselves again. The secret is, if you get to that sooner, the world loves you way more. And I think AI is masking that. Like just being yourself, like who is this guy? And the more polished, the more veneers you put over that wood, that beautiful wood tone that God gave you, the harder it is for people to see. And in a lot of ways, I think that's what AI was doing. So the world belongs to creators. The world belongs to WYSIWYGs. The competitive advantage in this AI world belongs to people that are just human and are willing to let their humanity shine through, even if it's messy and unfinished and, all the things that make humans so beautiful. I just got up on like a little humanity soapbox. I did not see that coming. And I
I love it.
totally stand by everything I just said.
I totally do as well. I very much agree. And, it's when somebody is themselves, I know I've experienced this. I think there's two big pieces in it. One is that it provides and gives me permission to be myself as well. It's like creating a space of being myself. It's the same with vulnerability. If you're vulnerable, it's like lowering the drawbridge down for somebody else to actually feel that it's safe enough to open up and be themselves without having to be like perfect as such. And the second is that just showing that it's okay to make mistakes. Like the amount of times where like I'm on stage and something won't go right, when it comes to the talk. There was one event I did a few years ago and I'm, I start playing the song, during the keynote that I'm delivering and then just realize the guitar ain't plugged in. Like, I'm like, oh, might as well plug this one in then. And it was just, it added to it. It did. It added to it rather than just being like, dreading that occurred or anything like that. It's like, screw it, man. Like shit happens. And it happens to everyone. Right? Everyone's got their stuff going on. Everyone's got their own problems. Everyone's making mistakes at different times. And I think, when you have that authentic nature, and I'm guessing that that's what would make a peer group really powerful as well, right? Is that people are bringing their full versions of themselves rather than trying to be something that they're not.
I mentioned that in every group we have an outside expert, a guru. I know you're planning on coming and chatting with our group, so thank you. And they land some kind of truth bomb or, sage on a stage kind of thing. And then we have a conversation about it. And whenever we launch a new group, a new Flourish forum, that's what we call them, the first guru is always about authenticity. Every time. Whoever it is will come in and tell a story about when they realized they just had to be themselves and they illustrate, they set an example of what it sounds like when someone is just being completely raw and open. And it is the glue that keeps a group together. Because it's like, as soon as we can get to this level of sharing, we all are like, none of your lives are perfect. I have a friend who runs groups and, we do this thing where it's like business, family, personal, scale from 1 to 10. And this guy's 10, 10, 10. And he goes, wow, that must be amazing. And he's like, that my life is so good. He goes, no, that you're so delusional that you would report 10, 10, 10. And that person is no longer in that group,
Yep.
because he would not allow himself to be vulnerable. He would not allow himself to admit that his life wasn't perfect. And guess what? That won't fly, because none of our lives, even if our problems are first world problems, they're still problems,
Yeah.
So
One of the questions that I'll ask when I'm on stage often is, there's a part where I'll share about having a purpose that's bigger than your problems, and like that being one of the major pieces. That there's not many things that I've seen out there that result in the level of drive and dedication and discipline as having a purpose that's bigger than your problems. Right, the bigger the problems that you have, the bigger the purpose needs to be. And then I'll just ask, reach out to the audience, just go, is anybody here currently problem free? And it just gets a good laugh, because of course not. Like we all got stuff going on, and the more that we can have people around us to support us through that, to challenge us through that, the better off we're going to be. Which I love the work that you're doing. If we were to sum up some of the key things, somebody who's listening in here thinking, man, I've really got to shift my advisory board or shift a peer group or start that because I haven't really thought about it before. Let's maybe summarize it with a few key steps that you'd recommend they take, whether it's reaching out to yourself or elsewhere, to make sure that they're finding a peer group that is right for them.
Okay, so and I'm speaking with the intention of the outcome being busting through business and personal plateaus more readily, feeling safe with being able to share what's happening, and growing yourself personally and professionally. Those are the outcomes, because there's all kinds of different peer groups, but those are the outcomes I have in mind. Number one, I would strive for a true peer-to-peer experience. In other words, get in a room where everyone is actually running a P&L. They're actually in charge. No victims in the room. You can't have someone complaining about their boss. They have to be the ones with their hands on the levers, so that if they're complaining about how they're handling the situation, because then things can change. Otherwise, it's very frustrating, because you can't change someone. The person who is actually creating all the waves isn't even in the room with you. Number two, professional moderator. I think that leaders are used to leading, and they are like cats, and they need to be herded. And so someone has to herd those people. And it's a job. If you're the moderator in your group, you can't be fully present because you are trying to manage a group. And so that group has become a job, not a resource for you. So a professional moderator, please let it be a peer too. Someone that is doing it because they care about sharing wisdom and can empathize, not instruct. And then finally, I've said it already, but if everybody looks the same, is in the same industry, goes to the same church, goes to the same bathroom, laughs at everybody's jokes, or are best friends, it's probably a great friend group. And I encourage you to stick with it, but it is not an advisory group. Because you're reinforcing each other's blind spots. So try to get in a group that makes you feel uncomfortable, or that's engineered to see things differently than you see things. If you are looking at your own executive team or looking at your own advisory board, you can reach out to me. If you have your Colby or your team's Colby, I'm happy to chat about what the patterns of those Colbys show about your blind spots, your strengths, and the missing seats. I'm happy to help share what I see in those Colby results for free. It'll be my gift to you.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that. And I'm sure those listening would appreciate that as well. So, hey, we do have a rapid fire segment on the show called Your Edge.
Let's go.
So we go through values, beliefs, which we already did cover once. We'll summarize that again, and habits as well. So first question, number one value and why?
Gratitude. I think that my mom taught me to look at every situation, no matter what it was, and I'd be like, isn't this great? And I think that people that are grateful, that are naturally reflexively grateful, or have a practice of being mindful of being grateful. It sounds cliche, but you train yourself to see possibilities instead of problems. And man, that's how invention happens. That's how you have a happy life. The difference between a disruptor and someone who isn't is a disruptor sees possibilities where other people see problems. So anything you can do to keep yourself in a grateful mindset, life is just so much better.
I love that. One of the things that Brittany and I do at the end of the night is before we go to bed is what did you love most about today? And
I
we
love it.
share what do you love most every single day. Even when we've been away for apart from each other for the last week or so, she's been over in California, and yeah, it's a text message if we're not talking. And
I
hey,
love it.
what did you love most about today? And it trains you. And I will say, those of you are struggling a little bit from a sleep standpoint, it's not the only thing, but it's one small thing that if you can find something that you're grateful for, even though it might have been a pretty crappy day, there's just something about just ending the day with something good that definitely helps from a sleep standpoint of just going, yeah, things are okay. So,
And the
um,
mind, so Dr. Dan Baker, who wrote an awesome book, What Happy People Know, just a great book, one of my favorites. In that book, it's physically impossible for the brain to be anxious and grateful at the same time. It can't do it. Your brain can't do it. So you can literally make a list, put it on your nightstand of like the 5 things you're grateful for. It can be like, hey, I can still walk. I love the taste of chocolate. My kids are healthy. I have a job. It doesn't matter. If you read that list, your brain physically can't be anxious, which is fear. That's fear, and grateful at the same time. It's such a simple hack. Put it on your nightstand. It totally works. It's like
it's
it's the,
so
yeah.
good. About 10 years ago or so, probably 10, maybe even 12 years ago now it would be, there was the practice I did. I'd say a lot of it's unconscious now on my end, but like I would write down every single day, multiple things. And the most common thing, because there were just some days that weren't that good, the most common thing was being able to drink clean water. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be big. There are
Yes.
miracles around every single day if you search for them, if you seek them out. They are there. You can look around right now, and there are miracles all around as to your experience of life, and that's wonderful. So I love that. Let's go through the belief that you shared earlier again, if that's the one you want to share here. So a core belief that's really shaped who you become.
Wisdom is so much better than intelligence. Getting smart is painful. Wisdom is a gift. So I seek out wisdom. I look for people that have had experiences that they're willing to share as a gift to me that will make my path straighter, my life easier, and make me a better human.
Right, love that. And then from a habit standpoint, habit, ritual, or routine, something that you can't live without, whether it's a daily habit right out to, say, an annual tradition or something like that.
Yeah, so this is it's a simple one. I try to think about at the end of the day what the one thing I can do tomorrow is going to be that'll make the biggest impact. And I found that if I just have one thing that I get done, just one, as long as it's a thing that'll push the flywheel the hardest or move the ball the furthest down the field, I get that done in the morning. It's been a good day, and it helps me just keep things moving forward, and it helps me sleep better. Just like, what's the one thing I got to do tomorrow, and I'm going to do it when I get up.
I could definitely see that helping from a sleep standpoint as well, because, yeah, if you're waking up thinking about certain things during the night, and you haven't written it down, there's a reason why you're waking up thinking about it all, because you haven't written it down, right? If it's not down, then your brain should be waking you up because you haven't thought of it
Absolutely.
and haven't written it down. I love that. And it's such a way of being really focused, so that the first thing you do as you get up, bang, you're onto it. And like you said, if you can get that done and executed on in the first little bit of the day, then, you're off to a great start, and the momentum is really kicking in there. So good. Dude, it's been a great conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
I feel so privileged. Thank you, Cameron. I enjoyed sharing stories and getting to know you even better. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Where can people find out more about the work that you're doing?
Oh man, I'm so easy to find. Mike Maddock, Mike at mike-maddock.com is my email. If you Google Mike Maddock, you'll see me.
Yep.
Flourish Advisory Boards.com if you're interested in a turnkey peer group. Amazon if you're looking for books that I've written. And if I can help in any way, my purpose is to connect people in possibility. So if I can do that in your life, the answer is going to be yes.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to everything that was mentioned in the show notes. I'll make sure that that's there at CameronAtlas.com/podcast. Thanks again for being here, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation today.
Much love, brother.
Appreciate you. And hey, we've got some great new guests coming up. So make sure you hit that follow button and leave a comment. And until next time, go write the next line in your story. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on The Edge of Possible.